So now on to our next speaker, who is Ed Payne, who is a prominent dairy farmer from County Roscommon. And Ed runs Hilltop Dairies, which is a spring calving dairy herd. And his parents, Jimmy and Dawn, his wife, Jennifer, their two young boys, Ben and Darren, and his team of Layla, Paula and Joe all assist in the day-to-day running of the business. Hilltop Dairies milks 550 cows across 2 milking platforms 10 miles apart, and it rears all its own replacement heifers. So since starting milk production in 2011 with 120 heifers, Hilltop Dairies has expanded every year. And over that time, Ed strove to improve the genetic strength of the herd, to manage health risks within the herd while developing performance and financial efficiencies. And Ed also completed a Newfield Farming Scholarship in 2018. Now I can see Ed on the screen there, and I can hear some sound from your end, so I hope you can hear us okay, Ed. Are you happy to start your presentation there?
Yep, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ed.
So good evening, everybody. My name's Ed Payne of Hilltop Dairies in County Galway and Roscommon. And I'm just going to speak to you for a few minutes this evening about, I suppose, our approach to herd health here, some of the things we've seen since we started milking in 2011, some of the lessons we've learned along the way. And so just as way of introduction, I suppose, first and foremost, we're a family farm. Alongside my wife, Jennifer, our two young boys in the photo, Ben and Aaron. My father, Jimmy, is very involved in the business. My mother, Dawn, of course, is the rock behind the business. And then, as was mentioned, we have 3 full-time employees, Paul, Layla, and Joe, that keep the show on the road. Look, as we were saying, 550 cows on 2 milking platforms, 330 in Tulsk in County Roscommon, and 220 in Ballymoe in County Galway. We breed a high EBI cow with a herd average of 170. EBI herd health sub-index of 4 and a maintenance sub-index of 20. So I suppose when we started out breeding first, we would have been driving more the milk sub-index and the fertility sub-index, but definitely over the past 2 breeding seasons, our focus is moving now more towards bringing a more level EBI forward and certainly concentrating more on maintenance and the health side of things. We certainly consider ourselves a very grass-based business. We compact spring calving with well over 85% of the herd calving in 6 weeks, and that figure growing year on year. And look, we're producing well over 15 kilos or ton of dry matter per hectare per year across the grazing platform. So, and again, looking obviously to push that year on year as well into the future. So that's just a quick rundown on things. Our approach to herd health, and it was mentioned earlier on, Tommy was mentioning it, first and foremost here, it's very much prevention is better than the cure. And of course, first thing that jumps to mind is vaccines, and that's definitely the way. So we're vaccinating here for Salmonella, Lepto, BVD, IBR, and then we cover the cows for scour, obviously that's carried through to the calves that way. Our veterinary bill, or the economics of it, would be our veterinary side of things would be very much weighted toward preventative medicine. Now, I'm not saying we don't have emergency call-outs during the spring, we most certainly do, but we definitely would invest more in preventative medicine, let's say, than the fire engine stuff. And while we're on that, I suppose these call-outs in the spring, from a cow point of view, they're based around sort of that transition period, mainly from when we're going from shed out to grass. We get our fair share of maybe around the displaced abomasums. Other call-outs would be just general one-off cow problems, be them varied as they are. And a small touch maybe of mastitis needing call-outs there. But those are sort of some of the key areas that these fire engine calls during the spring are made. We'll talk about calves in a second, but from the calves' point of view for those call-outs, although we're vaccinating for pneumonia from a young age, we don't see too much of a problem there. It's just this burden of scour that Tommy was talking about building up for us later on in the season. And we're just trying to reduce the risk there and push that as late into the season as we can, and we'll get onto that in a second. We very much sort of agree or believe in the measure to manage policy, so we measure as many things as we can. We measure its blood samples, milk recording, bulk milk samples, grass samples, silage samples, whatever we can get a sample to get a picture of where the farm sits from a health point of view. And we do this for a couple of reasons. We're looking for sort of fluctuations in these results or these samples that give us a picture of maybe changes or something that's coming up down the road. But more importantly than that, if we do have an outbreak of any disease or anything, this data or this information that we have gives us a historical picture of where the farm sat 6, 12 or 18 months ago. So when a vet or someone like Tommy is coming to see you or to address a problem that may have arisen, if you can show them where the farm is coming from, where it was 6 months ago when it didn't have this problem, it gives them a big picture into the history from a health point of view of the farm, and that allows them to build a plan to remove this problem that you have at the time. So although the information as you're gathering it may not look like it's too informative, it builds behind you into a very large picture that can be very useful. What is there to be an outbreak on the farm? So then in the area of calf health, I suppose this picture on the slide is of our heifer calf shed on the Ballymo farm where we rear all our calves. This is a shed, a converted silage pit that has been roofed and sheeted all the way around. It's not airtight, but it is draft free. So calves go in here at 3 days of age or 4 days of age, and they're there until weaning. 240 calves can be housed in that shed. So as Tommy was saying earlier on, it's sort of just about the environment and keeping it right. So as I said, it's draft free because it's sealed fairly well all the way around. So then after that, we've installed 3 fans that blow air into these bags, as you can see, with holes in it. And so what they allow us to do is to circulate fresh air that moves the stale air away from the calves, keeps the environment fresh. We can control the temperature to a certain extent. And just allows us to keep the environment as correct as we can. And the reason for this is, like we were saying earlier on, is to trying to push this scour burden as late into the season as possible to reduce that risk of that appearing on the farm. Obviously, the reasons we try to push this late is quite simply we're so compact calving. If we can get that past Paddy's Day or even into the 1st of April, the onset of this scour, obviously we're calving less cows per day, so the amount of calves that are susceptible to it is much lower, and we have more time in the day to deal with this smaller number of calves that are susceptible. So it's just, because to date we found that scours are inevitable every season. It's just a matter of building it up and managing it as best we can and pushing the burden as late as we can, and who knows how late we can get it and maybe eradicate it. But for the moment, it's just about managing that risk as late into the season as possible. So that's the environment on the calf side of things. From the cow side of things, the environment, I suppose, it's very much around the housing and that area. And so we're talking about sort of the cubicle space and the feed space. Now, some of our sheds are fine and some of them are far from ideal, but we very much focus in the transition period from this cow going from the dry period into a milking cow period. So at that transition period, we certainly try to have enough cubicle space and enough feed space for these cows. And it's all about reducing the stress and in turn reducing the risk factor of those cows being susceptible to any disease or any outbreak, as Tommy was mentioning earlier on. So obviously disinfected cubicles and stuff like that, and access to clean drinking water. But it's just mainly about this cubicle space and feed space at the transition time when stress levels are high. To just, again, it's just a risk management to try and reduce the burden. And lastly, on this one, around the area of laboratories. So anything that we see fit, any stillborn calf, premature calf, any cow that's died from an unknown reason or even for a known reason, we would try our best to get away to a laboratory for testing. And 9 times out of 10, or even more often than that, the reports come back for what the vet had told us or what we presumed was the cause of death. But we're waiting for the one report that is not what we were expecting or shows up something unexpected. And those are the reports that we really focus in on, obviously, and that's what's reducing the risk down the road. So in a compact spring calving like this, I always feel that if you wait for the problem to come and find you, it's going to be too late. So we really have to focus and get these tests done and these reports in if there's any problem around that Christmas or early January period, and it really gives us a chance to what might be a very small alteration with minerals or something like that can really take off any risk for when the calves start to come. Because come the 1st of February, if any changes have to be made after that, by the time the changes are made and they're implemented and they've had any effect, we could have maybe 200, 300, 400 cows calved by the end of February, and you're into a big problem. So it's a matter of being educated regarding that as early as possible and getting that information and acting on it. So just to speak now, the next slide is about an outbreak of a disease that we had on our farm winter 2012 or spring 2013. So Mycoplasma bovis were 2 words I knew nothing about on Christmas Day of 2012, but unfortunately by the May Day of 2013, I knew far too much about it. So again, I can only speak about our experience, but in 2013, we had 213 cows due to calve. 25% of those were affected by Mycoplasma bovis in 2 main strains, the way of swollen joints, which led to severe lameness, and the other way was mastitis, which was spreading in the parlour. So a very contagious disease, to the extent when it was at its peak, we could go into the dry or the milking cow shed any morning, and we could pick out 5 or 6 cows that had been affected that night, and then that even during the day, then we'd have a walk around during the day or that evening, and there'd be 3, 4, or 5 more cows being affected. And obviously within the mastitis side of things, it was spreading within the parlour. No cure or no treatment, no vaccine for this mycoplasma, so it was only a matter of containment for those with lame joints and isolation of those. And then regarding the mastitis, obviously there was fairly heavily culling there, and a good few cows had to be removed from the herd as a result. And look, we won't dwell on it, but of course anything like this has a stress factor for everyone involved. We were a business in its infancy at the time, 2 or 3 years milking. We were, at a high risk level from a financial point of view. We needed things to go our way, and something unforeseen, a problem like this to come out of the blue, wasn't what we needed, and certainly added a lot of stress. It was without a doubt the most difficult thing that I've come through since returning home to take over the farm. But look, as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I'll just talk through maybe some of the lessons that we learned as a result of the outbreak. It showed us how vulnerable we are, and look, nobody needs to look too far at the moment to realise how a disease outbreak like this can bring an economy or a business or a country, whatever way you want to look at it, to its knees fairly quickly. So we were shown in 2013 just how vulnerable we were, no matter how prepared or how much planning we had put in place. Something, there can always be something there ready to give you a little nudge or a kick when you least expect it. So it just showed vulnerability, but it also showed us the strength of a great veterinary team. We were sending cultures away at the time to the local labs and that to be cultured, and they were doing no problem there, doing a great job. But our vet said to us, she said, I learned about mycoplasma in college and I've never seen a case of it, but some of these symptoms are showing up like that. But it does take longer to be cultured. It needs to be cultured for 10 days. So why don't we send a sample away to be cultured for 10 days for micro? 11 days later, we had a positive result back from mycoplasma. And it was like a weight being lifted, really, because on that day we knew what we were dealing with, we knew what we were taking on. And look, had that vet not said that, had she not had the sort of the bravery to step up and say, look, let's push it on, let's ask more questions, try and solve this problem, and not just put it down to just farmer problem or something happening on the farm, to realize that there was something larger and to push on and find it. Who knows how long it would have taken us to realize it, and what the onset problem would have been in the middle. So then going on from that, once it was diagnosed, or once we knew what we had, our vets put us in contact with some very intelligent people, and we gathered a group of experts around us, and we said to them, put a protocol together, put a plan together to get rid of this out of the farm, and we'll do that. We'll take on your advice. It's open doors here, and whatever you say we'll do, we'll jump a headline and sinker in and do that. So it's just a matter of taking advice, not just sticking our head in the sand, not saying, look, this is our problem, we'll sort it. Going out there, finding the advice and taking these people on. And then the communication thing, I suppose, is linked to the stress. Prior to finding out what it was when that was key, just to keep the strength within the business, within the family, that we could continue to communicate. After we found out what it was literally, that was the day the light at the end of the tunnel started to shine, and we could bind together then and move towards it. But it was before that when we really knew that we didn't know what we were dealing with, but we knew there was a problem, and we just had to move on with that. And then, very important, the importance of a dump group on our farm. So to explain this, any cow that calves enters the dump group, and in order to get out of that group to go to the main milking group, as we call it, she must pass the CMT paddle. So every cow in the main milking group has passed the CMT paddle, and if she gets mastitis there, she comes back into the dump group. So it's a group of cows that are obviously on withdrawal for dry cow therapy or for any other therapy, and she's there, and in order to get out of that, she must pass the CMT. So when we had the outbreak of mycoplasma and these vets came to the farm, we were able to say with confidence that we had the mycoplasma. Although this dump group was getting bigger, a lot of the freshly calved cows, very few of them, they were all entering the dump group and only a few of them were getting back out again. This dump group was growing, but we knew the problem was contained in there. Had we not had that dump group on the farm at the time, look, I don't know how big the problem would have been or how severe the culling would have had to be. So it's been on the farm since we started milking, this idea of a dump group, and it definitely was a huge help to us that year. So look, just to summarize, I suppose, at no point, I suppose, was I trying to say that at Hilltop Dairies we do everything right, but I suppose we do what we can. We try to control what we can control so that come the 1st of February, when things maybe, I won't say move out of control, but when things are too late to change, that we are as ready as we can be, and we can confidently say that we've reduced the risk, we've managed the risk as best we can going into the busy period. We look at vaccines here as an insurance policy, just prevention better than cure, an investment in the future of the herd, whatever way you want to look at it, but that's just the way it is here. And problems will arise. It's about communicating within the business, listening to the experts, building a team around you that that will give you the advice that you need, that are the people that have the right advice, and then acting on it. Most importantly, to make sure that you don't just bury your head in the sand or hope that it'll go away, or whatever way you want to look at it. That you act on the problem in front of you and try and get rid of it. And look, lastly, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here this evening. It's been great for us as a business to look at how we approach our own herd health, our strengths and weaknesses. It's been great to be able to have a look at it ourselves. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. It's been a whirlwind tour and a tip of the iceberg. I'm contactable there on that email address if anybody has any other that they want me to expand on anything I've said or touch on any other areas, be it fertility or whatever else, some of the areas I haven't touched on. But look, that's me and that's my presentation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Ed. That was an absolutely very interesting talk for myself, and I'm sure for a whole lot of other people. Well, and it's not a question for you now because we are taking the questions at the end, but I think it's very interesting that you had this, you had a very substantial herd health problem there, and yet it didn't have a card around every cow's neck saying what it was. You had to really work to get to the bottom of it. And that is likely to be the case if we get the likes of an exotic disease in. It may not be very obvious what's going on. So exactly what Ed did to get to the bottom of that Mycoplasma bovis is the kind of thing that will help us as a national herd, I suppose, to get to the bottom of an exotic disease. It's farmers and vets who really go the extra mile and step up and look for the answers when there's no answers coming, and keep looking. If the first sample doesn't give the answer, send off the second one, send off the third one, and keep at it. So thanks very much indeed for that, Ed.